as a starting point, it seems like some people might not know anything about SinglePlatform. So maybe just start us off with what you guys do and also how big you guys are.
Sure. So most people probably don't know anything about SinglePlatform. We are I guess we're about 3 years old at this point. Launched early 2010. And basically what we are is we serve small and medium-sized businesses and help them manage their web presence, kind of a one-stop shop. So mostly focus on search results and social media. So it's not search marketing, we're not doing SEO on their websites or anything like that. We have partnerships with online publishers from Google, Yahoo, down through Yelp and Foursquare and City Search, TripAdvisor, down to little local search sites, industry-specific niche search sites. And basically through those partnerships, our customers can come on, they have a SinglePlatform account, they can put in their business listings, whether it's a restaurant, which has been our bread and butter for the past few years, put their menu in, they can update prices, they can update specials, they can change things on the menu, they can add promotions, happy hour specials, whatever they have, and basically in real time that information is syndicated out to every place that they're going to come up in search. And we also connect with their social media, so their Twitter feed, their Facebook, so those listings appear seamlessly there as well, and really just help them so these small business owners can work on managing their business instead of managing their web presence.
And how you guys started a few years ago, but how big are you now? How scaling your system?
So right now we are just about 100 employees, and definitely still very much in growth mode. We were acquired actually last summer by Constant Contact, a publicly traded email marketing company, and so now we're really starting to be in a situation where we can take advantage of that, utilize some of those resources, utilize some of the guidance and kind of the infrastructure help that they're able to offer us. And really we're at the starting point of kind of the next major growth phase. So we're looking to hire, like between now and September, between now and the end of September, we're looking to hire probably about 65 people. So we're definitely still very much on an upward trajectory.
And your the title is head of talent, right?
So my title is Director of HR and Administration.
Right. So what does that entail? What's your day-to-day?
So the HR thing is HR. So basically, it's recruiting, but it's also it's basically the employee life cycle. So everything from what we are trying to bring them in till we're trying to keep them in and trying not to let them leave, or sometimes trying to make them leave. So it's really kind of that whole life cycle. So it's recruiting through onboarding, employee development, learning, training, performance management, kind of the whole shebang. So thankfully, I'm less hands-on with most of the recruiting. I inherited a fantastic, super smart recruiter who's handling most of our sales recruiting, which is the highest volume piece. And so that's great that I don't have to focus on that, because if I was doing that, I wouldn't be able to do anything else. So really I get to do like the fun, meaty stuff for the most part, really kind of come in and build things.
What's the fun, meaty stuff for you?
So for me, I mean, I came in and even during my interview process there, and I'm relatively new, I've only been there for about 3 months and change. And so I'm the first HR person that they've had at the company. And during the interviews and my talks with Wiley, our CEO, everything revolves around culture for him, which is fantastic. And he asked me in my first interview, first time I met him, he said, so as we scale this company, as we grow this company, so right now we're, 80 people, as we grow this company and double it and triple and quadruple in size, how can we make sure the culture doesn't change? And I said, you can't. Like it's not going to happen. You can't have the same culture and the same feel at 300 people that you had at 80 people or at 20 people. What you can do, though, is identify the pieces that you really want to hang on to, the pieces that are valuable, the pieces that define how you look at that company, and make sure you're doing everything you can to hold on to those and nurture them and improve them. And then at the same time, look at what else you can bring to the table, what else you can build to foster the kind of environment, the kind of culture that is scalable and that you can have with a 300, 500, 1,000 person company. And so that's the needy stuff, you know, so right now, I mean, just to do like some bullet points on some of the things that are kind of on the docket, and this is all, everything that I'm going to talk about at SinglePlatform is in its infancy right now, because we're just kind of getting everything off the ground, but launching a learning program, SinglePlatform University, where basically we're going to be bringing in, initially it's going to be outside subject matter and teaching experts into do formalized kind of classroom setting trainings on various topics. We're looking at building out some of the social activities. As a company grows and scales, it's natural for functions to kind of separate a little bit. Everybody in sales doesn't know everybody in engineering, because engineering is in their own little room behind some glass doors because they like it quiet. Sales does not like it quiet. And so finding ways for people to interact between those functions. You know, right now I'm in the midst of a series of focus groups going out through the entire organization, basically. You know, because I came to it and I had this list of all these things that we can do, and oh, that sounds great. But what if everybody hates this stuff? Like, what if nobody wants to do any of this? I think it's a great idea. And so right now, eliciting feedback from literally, with the exception of kind of the management team, every employee in the company, and getting what's important to them, what do they like, what do they not like, what can we do better, and really use that to kind of build the roadmap for where we go from here.
Sounds awesome.
It's fun.
I forgot to mention the format, so I'm just here kind of getting things started, but if you have a question, I might not be able to see, but just raise your hand and shout it out. We got one.
So as the company continues to grow, obviously seems like you guys are scaling pretty fast. What are your plans to, you can probably over a lot of these rounds, but to encourage or to increase employee retention and decrease turnover and stuff like that, especially for sales?
Yeah. It's the $1 million question, yeah. and it's hard. And so our structure is such that most of our sales force is a very junior. A lot of them it's their first time out of college. For some others, it's, you know, we've got a few people that like thought they wanted to be in finance and then changed their minds and came to sell for us. But it's very flat within the sales organization, and basically, as we grow that function, we're going to have new positions in terms of like junior and mid-level sales managers and kind of team leads. But right now, there's not a ton of room for anybody who wants to grow beyond or outside of sales. And so yeah, retention is key, and we don't have right now the infrastructure, we don't have the structure at all to offer a linear movement into some other area, because frankly, I mean, what we have, our functions are sales, customer support, product, and engineering. That's pretty much it. And so if somebody wants to get into something else, it doesn't exist. And that's where like this university program comes in. What we're trying to do, and really kind of the vision behind it, is to demonstrate that we care about these employees, that we are investing in them, and that we do want them to develop and grow and be successful. And without saying in so many words, really acknowledging that in all likelihood, where they're going to continue to grow and develop and be successful may very well not be at SinglePlatform, at least at this stage. we get to a different place in our evolution, or we have maybe some different functions built out, and there are those opportunities. But right now, they're not there. And I think somebody said this to me today, that a lot of entrepreneurs and startup founders really, they judge themselves by the trail, the wake of startups that their progeny is involved with. And I think that's kind of the philosophy behind this, is we have super smart people, like smart, engaged, high energy, entrepreneurial, like they want to make things happen. And that's why we hired them, because they're incredible. But we want them to go out and do amazing things, and basically to be able to kind of say, yeah, and where I got my start, like where I learned how to do this stuff, where, like, it all goes back to SinglePlatform. And that is, right now, I think, as much a retention tool as we're going to be able to build in the near term. At the same time, it's also a great recruiting tool. So really kind of everybody wins. And that's really the extent of the retention strategy right now.
2 questions, if that's allowed.
It depends on the first one.
Okay, so the first one is your background, and you're only here for SinglePlatform for 3+ months. So your background and maybe what you're bringing from your most recent positions to the table at SinglePlatform. That was a question.
Sure.
That passed the test you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Bring it.
Okay, and 2 is with the acquisition of Constant Contact. Since this is the people side, what are some of the people side benefits that you're able to sort of get from this acquisition?
All right, so question 1, my background. So, like most people in my field, I guess, I probably did not have any designs to be like an HR guy when I grew up. I came to New York as an actor. That was my thing. I was a musical theater undergraduate degree, came to pursue the Broadway dreams, and did that for a handful of years. Kind of checked off the boxes, and at a very specific point, when I was about to propose to the woman who's now my wife, said, what, maybe I should think about a grown-up job. And at that point, I was temping. I was in a temp job at the company that would be my first real employer. It was Condé Nast Publications, big magazine publisher, and I temped there like 3 years earlier. They offered me a job, and I said, forget it. Like, me in an office? And so then 3 years go by, temping again, hey, so do you want to stay? Do you want to stick around? And at that point, I was ready. So started out there. That was the biggest company I've ever worked for. I've kind of been scaling down since then. So I started out in media, Condé Nast, and then after several years there, more publishing, went to work at Playboy Enterprises, spent 2 years there running their HR function in New York, and then a very short time at a very tumultuous PR agency, and then immediately before SinglePlatform, I actually was working upstairs in this building at TheLadders.com. So spent, I guess, a year and a half there, and then now here I am at SinglePlatform, and kind of going through various HR iterations, sometimes focusing solely on recruiting, sometimes not at all focusing on recruiting, really kind of trying to build up the playbook and figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And I think I finally found it. Like, I think this is kind of what I've been looking for, is that, like, I want to go make something. And that's what led me to SinglePlatform.
Before you get into the second question, how does your experience at TheLadders.com influence, like, maybe those first plans that you had and what you're doing now?
So it's a huge influence. So TheLadders.com, I don't know how familiar anybody is with it, but probably heard of the name. It's on the door outside and you walked into the building. When I got to TheLadders, they were as big as they ever became, size-wise. And I was there through a rough time with the company. We had a few rounds of layoffs, and from a culture standpoint, it was tough. I think that we had all the trappings. Like, you walk in and you'd say, oh, this has all the cool stuff that like a cool tech company has. Like, we had snacks, and we had like foosball and ping pong table and like a little one-hole putt-putt course, and you know, the Xbox. Like, we had all this stuff, but nobody was using it. And I think that there was a real missed opportunity, probably long before I got there, to really focus on the people side, and say, hey, we want to make culture a priority, and we want to make sure that we're hanging on to this so that as we scale and as we grow, we're able to maintain the kind of place that we want this to be. And so that then in the tougher times or leaner times or whatever, we're not scraping to try to kind of get it back. And that's where I found myself, and that's where I think the team found ourselves at TheLadders, which was somewhere along the line, we lost that great culture. And a lot of people talked about like the good old days and everything was great. And so that informs so much of what I'm doing at SinglePlatform, because like I never wanted to get to, oh, remember like the good days? I want the good days to kind of continue. And so making a super conscious effort to maintain that and foster it and nurture it is, that's my number one priority. And I think it's hugely influenced by TheLadders, where there were really smart people doing some really great things, and that just wasn't a priority.
Before you get to the second question, which I haven't forgotten, in the first meetup I got to ask Dane Atkinson of Sumall what culture is to him, because it to me ends up being this like black box thing that gets thrown around, but you seem to have like a clear idea of what it is.
That's a fallacy. So culture, it's funny, like in the focus groups I've been doing, I have some questions about culture. I'm like, what are we doing right? What could we be doing better from a culture perspective? And I always qualify that question with, and culture can be defined however you see it. But to me, it's almost an intangible. It's a feel, it's a vibe, it's an energy. It can be influenced and composed of things like dress code and social events and how and ping pong tables and whatever. But that's not the culture. The culture is how people interact with each other and how people feel going to work every day, I think. One of the greatest things that I can possibly hear, and I've been hearing this so much in these focus groups I'm doing, which makes me super happy, is that and some of these people, like these kids in these inside sales positions, they're cold calling people all day and just getting yelled at and hung up on. It's not great, but they say, I love coming to work here. Like, I love it. The people are amazing. I get to come work with my friends. It's a place where I feel valued. It's a place where I feel like there's something in it for me. Like, it's someplace I like to be. And that, I guess that's culture, is whether people like to be there. So I don't know if that answered your question, though.
It's good.
I kind of made it up as I went along.
It also sounds like part of your retention plan. Maybe not part of the plan, but that is the retention plan. Yeah. Culture is the retainer. In some of these, for some jobs anyway, like for these cold calling sales jobs, culture is the only retention tool, because it's not. Yeah, they make good money, but they can make good money cold calling and selling anywhere if they're successful salespeople. But is this the place they want to be every day? Okay, so back to question 2.
So now question 2 is so long ago. Wait, so what was it again?
The people side benefit of constant contact.
Oh, people side benefit of constant contact. So personally, there's a huge people side benefit, which is that I don't have to think about things like negotiating with benefits providers or running payroll or kind of the things that aren't fun for me from an HR perspective. So that's personally. I think as a company overall, like what is bringing the single platform is kind of the same thing that it's bringing to me, I guess, which is, so I'm a one-man show basically at SinglePlatform. I have, I mentioned before, this fantastic recruiter who I inherited, but from everything that's not sales recruiting, it's just me. And I have this amazing resource, which is this team at Constant Contact, and people who have, some of them have been exactly where I am now, and some of them have never been there, but have different experiences and form things. Like there's somebody who runs learning and development, there's somebody that runs talent acquisition, there's somebody that runs like the strictly business partner aspect of HR, and there's somebody that runs like the systems and rewards piece, like all these subject matter experts, which I am not one on anything. And so to get to bounce things off of them and kind of and call on that resource and that expertise and say, oh, that's good. I'm going to see how I can adapt that to something at SinglePlatform. That's phenomenal. One level up from that is the model of human resources, of the people aspect, the Constant Contact, is maybe the most valued function in the company, and that provides an amazing blueprint for what we can do at SinglePlatform. I mean, the head of HR at Constant Contact is the #1 confidant, right-hand advisor to the CEO. She places a huge value on HR and the people aspect and development. And so that as a model gives me a ton of leeway to say, I want to build this stuff. And people say, yeah, that's good. Build away. So it's taken away almost all resistance to anything that seems like a good idea.
SinglePlatform has been able to preserve its own identity.
Absolutely.
Within that. That's pretty unique.
Totally. So it helps that our parent company is in another state, and that there hasn't been a merge. Like it's, we're still SinglePlatform. Now we're SinglePlatform by Constant Contact, but basically when they acquired SinglePlatform, when Constant Contact acquired us, it was, we think that you guys are doing something amazing. We think you've got a great idea. We think you have a great fledgling business. We think you have great leadership. Do your thing. We don't want to get in the way of that. Here's some resources, here's some help when you need it, here's some guidance, here's some a couple times when they step in and say, hey, why don't you go over this way a little bit? And that's been great, but then it's like, okay, we're not stepping on your feet, we don't want to get in your way, like build your business, build your brand, build your product. And down the road, that will probably change. There will be probably more of a merge once I think SinglePlatform scales to the point where we have more in common with Constant Contact proper. But right now they're saying, go do your thing, like make money. And so that's been great. Oh, are you supposed to be calling up people? I'm sorry. I don't know how this works.
So you've been there for 3 months, right?
Just about.
So what was the immediate need, and what does the next 6 months look like?
So the immediate need was to fill a March sales hire class with 10 people. That was the immediate need. And so then we did that. We got it out of the way. But I would say probably the most immediate need, and it's hard to answer that because it's not like I walked in and there were these fires that needed to be put out. I didn't walk into a disaster. I walked into a pretty self-sufficient startup environment where they just had been making do because there hadn't been anyone whose job was to focus on the things that it's my job to focus on. But I think that it was tackling what can we do about retention, what can we do about normalizing and kind of bringing some cohesion to the process is a dirty word, but how we do things. so that we're not making it up, because that's the thing, people were just making it up every time something would come up. And so a lot of it was just kind of making people's lives easier, like a performance warning, something as seemingly simple and innocuous as that. A salesperson goes on warning because they're not hitting numbers at a certain level, but every time that happened, it was, oh wait, what's the criteria? What are we doing? How do we say this? Who says it? What do we do? What do we tell them? Oh, do we need to fire this person? How do we do that? And it was just answering all those questions one time so that we then could start to do things like that and not have to think twice about it. We knew how to handle a sales performance warning. And I think those were those little things that it was just building that up so that I can now focus on the fun stuff. So that every 5 minutes it wasn't, how do we, this guy's not making his numbers, what do I do? And really kind of freeing myself up to do what I like, I guess. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
It seems like you initiate a fair amount of change. I'm wondering, with that, obviously, with any change, you have to also, you're expecting a change in behavior too. What have you experienced as far as expecting staff to change behavior that's been, you see that's really gotten you excited, or what are also some of the challenges that you faced expecting to see change in staff?
So, the parts that really have gotten me excited about that, and actually I think that's really interesting, it's something that now that you say it, I'm like, oh, yeah, of course, it totally makes sense, but never thought about it that way before. So the stuff that really gets me excited, that I love, that's like working well and that's going the way, is when I go to our CEO or any other of the members of the executive team or any of the managers or anyone, and I say, hey, there's this thing, here's what we want to do, I think this is going to be great. They will say, that's awesome, have you thought about this? What about this consequence and this thing, and how can we make it better? Like, you know HR, I know my team, great. It's this amazing partnership, but it's never a we can't do that. It's always a yes and. And so that's been amazing. Now, I would say where it gets a little more challenging is probably when it comes to, I mean, realistically, when it comes to anything that takes people off the sales floor. There's a little bit of grumbling. Not from the salespeople, they're happy to take a break and do something else and learn something or whatever. But it's, you know, we're super sales-driven, numbers-driven business. Like, that's how we operate, and we operate on low profit margins, and we need to make certain things. And so I need, if I'm proposing something that's going to take a number of people away from selling for an hour or 2 hours, I better have a reason that that's a good idea. And so it's been sometimes, I guess, challenging to match up how excited people are for an idea versus how maybe less excited they become when it means having some disruption to their normal daily lives.
So, question. Talking about numbers, right? You said by September you'll hire another 65 people, right? 12 months out, how many people is that? What is the process of scaling, right? And what tips would you give us, specifically considering that you're new to the organization?
Right. So we're going to be hiring, and actually I think that number is probably closer to 70 and it's mostly concentrated in sales, and it's mostly concentrated in June, July, August, September. That's pretty much what we've got. So right now, we're looking at filling 18-person sales class for June, 17 for July, 16 for August, 17 for September. And there's a lot of people coming. Now, there is a built-in expectation of a certain level of attrition. And so we're not planning on being 70 people more at the end of September than we are now, because we will continue to lose people. It's how it goes, and especially when you have this entry-level sales force that has a ceiling kind of in terms of where they can go at the moment. But I think that from a systems standpoint, I guess it's easier because we have the benefit of this constant contact kind of experience level and how they run things. And as we get to a point where things scale beyond my ability to be a one-person kind of stopgap for everything, I have the luxury of being able to hand some stuff off and say, hey, you know what, like this is now big. Hey, look, it's big, it matches what you're doing at constant contact. So can we like put that together if it works? What I'm looking at in terms of really scaling is, from an organization standpoint, we need to create opportunities for at least our superstars, however we choose to define that at any moment. And so that means building out management opportunities. We're actually going to be building a small cohort that we'll be promoting people into of coaches for the sales team. Like we've got kind of a sales management layer that manages a team of 10, 12, 13 people, and we're going to have these other coaches that basically are going to go around and sit with salespeople, walk them through everything. Oh, you're having trouble with the close, like let's talk about that, let's get you through this. And so that's going to be new opportunities. I think it's just scaling is just finding new opportunities for people to challenge themselves. And however you want to make that happen, as long as you can keep up, that's the important thing. And so right now I'm just hoping that we can keep up. I know we're not going to bat 1,000 on this thing. I know we're going to have regrettable losses. I know that we're going to go through growing pains. But I think in terms of scaling the organization, like there's the organization piece and there's the scaling the business piece. And right now, like, we're still figuring out how we're scaling the business. We know we're adding a bunch of salespeople. But there are so many other factors involved in scaling the business side of how are we going to actually scale the sales process and increase productivity and tweak kind of how we're approaching our customers and perfect and develop a more robust marketing function so that we can feed the sales function better. How are we going to build a product that does more, better, faster? And so all of that, I think, needs to be answered before we can really dig into how are we going to scale the organization and the people. Because if you go people first, then you end up with this thing that may or may not do what you need it to do. So I guess it's maybe more reactive than I'd like to be, but right now that's kind of where we have to be. Is my plan for scaling is the next 6 months. And at that point, we need to see kind of what that next step looks like and what that next level looks like. Because hopefully we'll have a better picture then of what the next level of scaling the business is. And I guess I can't put the cart before the horse on that.
So you're a startup and you're like 2.5, 3 years old, but you're also post-exit. So like what impact does that have on any of these things, especially recruiting? So
it's interesting. Actually, I was talking to, so we're hiring for a marketing leader right now. And I was talking to a guy, I found him online and thought, yeah, this is a great guy for us. Everything on paper was right. Reached out to him and he got back to me and he was, a little hesitant. His first question was about equity. And, I answered it. I said, yeah, well, will certainly be an equity component to the compensation package, but it's, an options grant for constant contact stock, which actually is an existing thing. And so then that apparently was a good enough answer. So then we were talking and, so he's an example of, he's in a startup. They just raised a Series B and there is a lot of talk about an exit on the horizon. And so that definitely affects me because this guy could come in and say, hey, this is like the perfect job for me. I love this team. I want to be a part of this thing. I want to build this thing. But I don't know what his equity stake is there or what that exit might look like. But that's a very significant thing to overcome. Like, he's not going to jump from that unless we can come to the table with something really, really good. So it's a challenge in that respect. But that's only, I think that's in the minority of the cases of what I'm finding so far. I think that more what people are looking for when they think of joining a startup is the environment, is the culture, is being a part of something that they do still get to build, they do still get to think and be creative, and build a legacy. And so I think for a lot of the people that we're talking to, a lot of people that I'm looking to hire, that's the more important piece of startup life rather than the exit strategy and get rich and don't have to do anything else. I mean, some of the people have already been through that and they're back. I mean, even if you look at, if you look at Wiley, our CEO, like, he went through a huge exit with Seamless when they were acquired by Aramark, and then he wanted to go back to work. And so he started SinglePlatform, and he went through the exit and he didn't leave. And he stayed, and he wants to keep growing, he wants to do this thing. So, like, I think for people who have the mindset that we need right now, that's a less important factor, unless they're walking away from something.
You mentioned Wiley a couple of times. How receptive is CEO Wiley to the stuff that you're doing, and what's your relationship to it?
I can't say enough amazing things about how he is as not only as a leader, he's amazing, but as a partner for culture and people and HR stuff. Like, that's his bread and butter. He's not an operations guy. He's not an engineer. He's not, I don't know, what else do people do? Do other things. He's not any of those other things. Like, he's an inspirational leader. He's a leader of people. He wants to get down and dirty, and he's very much about how are you doing? And at every level of the organization, it's how are you doing? And what can I do to help you and to make that better? And that was one of the reasons that I jumped at this job and wanted to take it, was because I'm like, okay, I'm going to report to this guy who believes so strongly in what he wants me to do. Like, there's a lot of stuff on my plate. There's a lot that I'm going to be expected to deliver and to really bring. But it's the stuff that my boss and my leader thinks is the most important stuff. And so I couldn't ask for more than that. I mean, he expects two things. Sales needs to make their numbers, and we need to maintain an amazing culture. Those are like the two things. Everything else, whatever.
Two questions. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has a question, but so what kind of role does employee recognition play? The single platform, constant content. I mean, you mentioned that you guys have systems and rewards piece, but maybe you can expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's so single platform has not yet really adopted much of the recognition programs that are in place at Constant Contact. They have some really good stuff. Some of it doesn't culturally really jive with single platform. They have, but it's really great for Constant Contact in general. They've got this WOW program. People can nominate their coworkers for a WOW award, and they get their desk all decorated with streamers, and they get this little stuffed animal WOW guy that sits there, and they love that. And that would not go over in a single platform. We have, so our recognition is mostly focused around currently our sales and customer support functions, primarily sales. And there are benchmarks on reaching certain sales levels, or top salespeople thing. We've got right now we have a color war competition going on for the month of April. So it's like summer camp, and the teams are competing against each other and getting points, and the winning team gets like a crazy night out with the executive team. The last winners, that was a crazy night out. So there's like a lot of competition and recognition for winning among the sales team. We've started our own version of this WOW program, which really the only similarity to the Constant Contact WOW program is the name, where our customer support group, our account managers collect anecdotes basically from our customers, and it's stories of this thing, we helped them do this thing, and they said this great thing. And so we've started posting these quotes on the walls all over the office, and also publicly handing them out to the people involved, the salesperson, the account manager, the people that kind of made that moment possible. And so that's something that's been really nice, and I think it's helpful because it's not only recognition of the employee, but also it's recognition that what we're doing works and is good and people like it. And I think that that's just really important for people to remember that, you know, we're selling this thing and it feels terrible all day and people are yelling at me and saying no and hanging up. But like when they buy it, they really like it and it works and it does what we say it does. And so that kind of recognition is something that's a few weeks old at this point. And I think we're going to be building out more of that. But yeah, right now I'd say it's definitely an immature area.
Chris?
So one of my favorite stories about hiring is PayPal in the early days, where they have like a half-day interview with this programmer they're trying to bring in. And at the end of this day, I don't know if you've heard the story, they ask him, oh, by the way, so what are you doing this weekend? And he says, oh, my basketball team, we're going to Sacramento, we have a tournament this weekend. They're like, oh, great, thanks for coming in. They're going around, you know, what did you think? Loved them, loved them, loved them. And then David Sachs of Yammer fame says, hey, no shot, we'll go on the next one. The idea being that people they want to hire are like sitting in the basement, like programming and doing like open source software all weekend. So basically, to the question, like obviously culture is so important at SinglePlatform. How do you like screen for these like intangibles?
That's, yeah, exactly. So what we look for is a couple of things, and I think it depends on what the function is, because we are at a point where we have developed some certain kind of subcultures within the overall culture. Everybody needs to be, I don't know, I guess what we'd call like startup ready. Everybody needs to be okay with change. Everybody needs to be comfortable working in a super fast-paced environment, high pressure, sometimes gray area, sometimes competing priorities. Everybody needs to be able to pass that sniff test. And beyond that, like, so if we're looking for engineers, they need to take a ton of pride in what they do. I actually prefer it if they said, I've never interviewed an engineer where on the weekend they're going because their basketball team's playing in Sacramento. Like, I would love that. You know, I don't want people who are just sitting in their basement coding all day. Like, I want people who are interested. I want people who are up on the latest stuff. But at the same time, like, we're not building the next Facebook. Like, we're not doing this thing that's going to make people famous and that's going to be always cutting edge, always thing. Like, our software serves a purpose, and it has to work from our merchant side, it has to work from our publisher side, it has to work. And yeah, we're adding features and we're improving, and we are you know, kind of in a continuous deployment mode, but it's not somebody that only wants to do the most cutting edge, coolest, latest stuff all the time. Like, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like working at SinglePlatform because there's a product already and it exists and we're fixing it and we're improving it and we're rolling out new features, but like, you're not building from scratch, you're making things better, and you're, you know, programming and you're working in Python, and that's kind of what we use right now. And cool. So that's one thing, and I think then the other side for the, you know, sales team, it's different because of the job, because it's cold calling. We need people who are aggressive, who are socially very confident and comfortable talking to anybody about anything, who have a healthy enough ego and self-confidence that a bunch of rejection is not going to like break them. So yeah, I mean, on our sales floor, yeah, like we have a lot of fraternity and sorority, you know, leaders. We have a lot of athletes. We have people who have this super type A personality and are ready to just go to town and make it happen. A, because the model has shown that that's what works for the function, but B, going back to culture, it's become for better or worse, a relatively homogenous group. And so we want people who are going to feel like a part of that and feel happy there and feel like these are my new friends and these are people that like I want to spend time with because I'm getting hung up on the phone. So I guess like depending on what we're looking for kind of different cultural tales.
One last question. Not to put you on the spot, but how many push-ups can you do and why can you do however many that you can?
Not as many as I will probably be able to do once we move back to our permanent space, which has more exercise equipment in it. So Wiley Cerulli, little backstory, pre-single platform, pre-seamless, Wiley was an underwear model. Wiley looks like an underwear model. He's in flawless shape. And I think that the example just kind of went off of him. And like in the days when there were, 10 people or 15 people or 3 people working out of Wiley's apartment in Brooklyn, they would just do push-up breaks, on the hour. We've kind of gotten away from that since we've been in our temporary space, which we lost our permanent home during Sandy. And actually we're moving back in at the end of next week. And so once we get back there, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And so hopefully my push-up count will go up. There's also a pull-up bar. Like I'm going to be jacked once we get back. It's going to be great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.